Welcome to Unit 3, and in this unit, you'll learn everything you need to know for cellular energetics.
Now, an overview for the light reactions. So, the light reactions happens in the thylakoid membrane. Now, the first step that needs to happen is that the chlorophyll that we find in photosystem 2, it absorbs the light. Okay, and remember, chlorophyll is a green pigment, and when it absorbs that light, it sends an electron to a higher energy state. Now, once this electron is in a higher energy state, we say that they are excited. Now, in photosystem 2, they will capture these excited electrons and then send them along the electron transport chain. Now, this electron that's been sent, okay, so this is the electron that's being sent. Now we have a missing electron, okay? So there's an electron missing. That electron needs to be replaced. And how that is done is we split water. Now, when we split water, we get 2 hydrogen ions, okay? We get half an oxygen with just 1 oxygen, but it will immediately bind with another oxygen to form oxygen. But it also releases 2 electrons. So that missing electron is now replaced. And we get those electrons from water. Now, after water is split, oxygen is released, and then these electrons move on the electron transport chain. And as they are moving from one energy level, they're moving from one part of the chain to another. Now, every time it moves, it pulls in another hydrogen ion, okay? Because every time it moves, it falls slightly in energy state, and that energy is not lost. Most of it is not lost as heat. It uses that energy to pull in a hydrogen ion. So here, inside the lumen or the interior space, I will have a very, very high concentration of hydrogen. And on the outside, I have a very low concentration in the stroma. Now, this creates that proton gradient. Okay, and this is what ATP synthase. So over here, this is ATP synthase. It's going to use that proton gradient to create ATP. So it's going to take ADP plus a phosphate and drive that inorganic reaction to make ATP. Now, the electrons are also flowing. Now, once these electrons are done with the electron transport chain, they need to go somewhere. So NADP plus accepts that electron and it becomes NADPH. And now NADPH is just a molecule that carries around this electron, and it will use these electrons in the light independent phase. So at the end of the light reactions, we have ATP and NADPH that were produced. This whole story starts with light and energy. Okay, so light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, and on the spectrum we find various different types of waves. So we find cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, infrared waves, okay, microwaves, radar, radio. All of these are on that spectrum. Now, it's only a very, very small part of this electromagnetic spectrum that our eyes can perceive as light. Okay? The smallest ones, this 400 nanometer waves, this falls in the indigo range, and here at 700 we have red, and anything beyond red is now infrared. Okay, now plants have these different type of pigments. Let me use a different color. Pigments. These pigments all absorb a different wavelength of light. Now what happens is in this pigment, it will absorb some light and it will reflect other light. And in the next slide, I'll show you what I mean by that. But if light has a short wavelength over here, okay, it has a very high energy. And if the wave has a long wavelength, it has lower energy. Okay. But when light, this is like the molecule over here that I just zoomed in. So if the molecule hits that electron, this electron gets bumped into a higher energy state. So we say that it is excited. Okay. So it's usually in an energy state close to the nucleus, but when light hits it and it absorbs that energy from light, this electron moves up an energy level, so it becomes excited. So for the overall flow, we start with photosystem 2, okay? The electron would move in photosystem 2 to the electron transport chain to be accepted by photosystem 1, okay? Here, it will be re-excited by another photon of light, and it would ultimately move to be accepted by NADPH, and it will carry those electrons. So yeah, that is just for the electron flow. And remember, this electron that is now missing gets replaced by the electrons that we get when we split water. Okay, so when we split water, it releases electrons, and it can replace that electron because this electron would then travel all the way to NADPH. And it needs to be replaced again. So it's a constant flow of electrons. This is your exit task for today. So if you're able to complete this, then you understood what I was trying to explain today. So a chemical blocks photosystem 2. So here we can see photosystem 2 is being blocked. Okay, and water can no longer replace those electrons. So those electrons cannot be replaced. So water cannot be oxidized. Okay, it cannot give those electrons away. What is going to happen to oxygen and NADPH? So oxygen production would decrease, okay, because splitting water occurs to replace electrons. And if we can't split water, then oxygen formation would not happen. Next, NADPH production would also decrease. Okay, we will have less NADPH that is reduced. Okay, because this electron would come in and it would reduce this electron and this electron, but then there are no more electrons. So ultimately, the production of NADPH is going to stop. So the production would decrease because electrons from photosystem 2 that move through the electron transport chain to photosystem 1 is accepted by NADPH. Now, this happens because electrons normally move from photosystem 2 to the electron transport chain to photosystem 1. And then water is important because it replaces electrons lost from photosystem 2. If you like that lesson, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.